that feeling when you think your life is about to change for the better, and then everything goes wrong? This is the story of a girl betrayed by her wicked aunt and turned into a talking drum. Long ago, in a quiet village where red earth kissed bare feet and palm trees whispered secrets to the wind, there lived a little girl named Zuri. But the first thing people noticed about Zuri was not her smile. It was the way she looked at the world, like someone who had been waiting for love for a very long time and still hoped it would come. Zuri lost her mother before she was old enough to remember her face. Sometimes, when other children talked about their mothers, about warm hands, soft songs, and the smell of soup on rainy days, Zuri would just stare at the ground and pretend she did not hear. It was not because she did not care. It was because her heart could not carry that kind of pain out loud. Her father followed not long after, leaving her behind like a leaf torn from its branch too soon. On the day he was buried, Zuri stood alone, too small to understand death, yet old enough to feel the emptiness it leaves behind. The village was full that day. People wore sad faces and spoke in low voices. Some cried, some whispered prayers, some shook their heads like they had no words left. With nowhere else to go, she was taken into her aunt's house. At first, the villagers said, "Blood is blood, she will be loved." But blood does not always mean kindness. Her aunt was called Mama Kande. In the village, Mama Kande was known as a strong woman. She smiled in public. She greeted elders politely. She spoke nicely when people were watching. Sometimes she even acted like she was doing Zuri a big favor. People would say, "Mama Kande has a good heart. She took the poor orphan into her home." But inside that house, where doors were shut and eyes did not follow her, Mama Kande's heart was not soft. She had a daughter of her own named Lami. Soft-spoken in public, sharp-tongued at home. From the very first day Zuri arrived, she stopped being a child and became a servant. By the age of 18, she had become used to hardship and suffering. Before the first morning sun came out, Zuri woke up in Mama Kande's house. Not because she wanted to, but because someone kicked the side of her sleeping mat. "Wake up, useless girl."
You sleep too much.
Zuri's eyes opened quickly. Her heart jumped. She sat up fast, confused and afraid. It was still dark outside. Even the chickens had not started moving. Lami stood over her with folded arms, her mouth tight with anger, like Zuri had done something wrong just by breathing. Have you swept the compound? Lami asked, as if Zuri was supposed to read her mind. Zuri blinked. "No, I just woke up." Fetch water, Lami snapped. Zuri stood up quickly. Her feet touched the cold floor. She rubbed her eyes and hurried outside before the shouting became worse. That day was the beginning, and it did not end. Every day became a list of commands. Every morning became fear. Every night became tiredness that sat in her bones like heavy stones. Zuri did everything. She swept the compound until dust rose into her nose and made her sneeze. She fetched water until her arms shook and her neck ached from balancing the pot. She washed clothes until soap burned the small cuts in her fingers. She cooked until smoke entered her eyes and made tears fall. Tears she quickly wiped away so nobody would think she was weak. Even when her hands cracked from soap and her back ached from carrying firewood heavier than her small body, she said nothing. Because in that house, speaking was dangerous. If Zuri spoke, Mama Kande would say she was rude. If Zuri complained, Mama Kande would say she was ungrateful. If Zuri cried, they would laugh at her. So she learned to swallow her pain like bitter medicine. At night, when everyone slept, she cried quietly into her mat so no one would hear. What hurt more than the work were the words. Mama Kande's words were like hot stones. They did not just fall and disappear. They stayed and burned. "You are eating food you did not work for." Zuri would stare at the small portion of food in her bowl and feel shame, even though she had worked more than anyone. "If your parents were alive, maybe you wouldn't be this lazy." That one always cut deeper. Because Zuri did not choose to lose her parents. She did not choose to be alone. But every time Mama Kande said it, it sounded like Zuri's pain was her own fault. Who would ever want a girl like you? That question would follow Zuri even when nobody was talking. And yet, Zuri remained kind. Not because life was kind to her, but because kindness was the only thing she still owned. She did not start throwing insults back. She did not start doing things with an evil heart. She still greeted people respectfully. She still helped elders carry things when she met them on the road. She still spoke softly. Sometimes, when Mama Kande was not looking, Zuri would even share a small smile with little children in the compound. It was not a big smile, just a gentle one, like a small light refusing to go out. And that kindness showed itself in her beauty. As years passed, Zuri grew into a young woman with eyes that held sadness and strength at the same time. Her eyes were not loud, but they spoke. They spoke of long nights. They spoke of quiet tears. They spoke of a heart that had been stepped on many times and still did not turn into stone. Wherever she went, people noticed. Not because she tried, but because pain has a way of polishing the soul. Even in plain clothes, there was something graceful about her. Even when she was carrying heavy loads, her steps still looked calm. Even when she was dirty from work, her face still had a soft beauty that did not disappear. Villagers would sometimes whisper, "That girl, she is growing into a fine young woman. She has the eyes of someone who has seen too much. She is too good for this suffering." But Zuri did not hear most of these whispers, and even when she did not allow them to enter her head like pride. She just kept working. Then one day, the town crier beat his gong so loudly the village trembled. Gong! 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 People stopped what they were doing. Women paused while washing clothes, men stood up from their stools, children ran from different corners of the village. The town crier stood in the center, chest out, voice strong. "People of the land," he shouted, "the prince will take a wife. Every maiden of age is invited to the palace." That announcement changed everything. In one moment, the whole village became restless, like dry leaves in the wind. Girls began to talk, mothers began to plan. Even those who had no fine clothes began to wonder if they could borrow something. In Mama Kande's house, the announcement landed like fire. Mama Kande did not sleep that night. Neither did Lami. They stayed awake, talking in whispers, their eyes wide, their minds moving like hunters searching for a trap. They watched Zuri as she swept the compound the next morning, how the sun rested gently on her skin, how even in rags she looked graceful. Zuri did not know they were watching her like that. She was just sweeping, her hands moving in a familiar rhythm, her mind far away. She was thinking about the palace announcement like everyone else, but not with excitement, with fear. Because deep inside, she already knew Mama Kande would not allow her to go. "If she goes," Lami whispered, her voice low and tight, "the prince will choose her." Mama Kande's face hardened, her heart hardened like stone. "We cannot allow that," she said. Those words were not shouted, but they were heavy. They sounded like a decision that had already been made. Zuri, still sweeping, did not hear them clearly, but she felt something. A cold feeling ran through her body, the kind that comes when danger is close. That night, while Zuri slept, Mama Kande wrapped herself in dark cloth and walked into the evil forest, a place no good soul entered after sunset. The village believed many things about that forest. They said strange sounds lived there. They said some trees had eyes. They said if you called someone's name there, the person could lose their way in life. But Mama Kande did not fear it, because jealousy can be louder than fear. She moved deeper and deeper until the village lights were gone, until the air changed, until even the wind sounded different. Deep within, she met a woman whose eyes did not blink and whose smile held no warmth. The witch's face looked calm, but not peaceful. Her calmness was the calmness of something that did not feel human. Mama Kande stepped forward and lowered her voice like she was speaking to darkness itself. The witch listened in silence. Then she handed Mama Kande a charm wrapped in dark cloth. When you place this on her head in a lonely place, she will become what you desire. Mama Kande's mouth lifted slowly. She smiled. And in that smile was something Zuri had never seen on her aunt's face before. Something cold, something pleased. Mama Kande wrapped the charm carefully, hiding it like a secret that was alive. Then she turned back toward the village, her steps quick and sure, because by morning she already knew what she would say. And Zuri, sleeping peacefully for once, had no idea that the worst day of her life was about to begin. The next morning, the sun rose softly over the village, spilling light on the red earth like warm palm oil. Zuri woke up early, as she always did. She rolled up her mat, rubbed sleep from her eyes, and stood to begin the day's work before anyone could shout. But something strange happened. Mama Kande called her name, gently. Zuri? Zuri froze. For a second, she wondered if she was still dreaming. Mama Kande never called her gently. Never. Zuri turned slowly, almost afraid to look. Mama Kande stood in the doorway. Her face was calm, her voice was soft, like she was speaking to a visitor. "My child," she said sweetly, "come here." Zuri's heart beat fast. She walked closer, careful, quiet, respectful. "Yes, Auntie?" Mama Kande smiled in a way that looked kind, but Zuri did not know it was not real. "My child," Mama Kande repeated, "your uncle is looking for you. He wants to see you with his own eyes." Zuri's eyes widened. "Uncle?" she whispered. Her chest warmed suddenly, not with joy exactly, but with something she had not felt in a long time: hope. Someone remembers me, she thought. For years, Zuri had been living like someone forgotten, like a shadow that nobody cared to understand. Even when she was surrounded by people, she felt alone. So the idea that an uncle, family, was looking for her felt like a miracle. "What uncle?" Zuri asked, her voice trembling a little. Mama Kande waved her hand quickly, as if the details were not important. "Your father's brother," she said. "He asked about you. He said he wants to see you with his own eyes." Zuri swallowed. She did not even know if it was true, but she wanted it to be true so badly. "Why now?" Zuri asked carefully. Mama Kande sighed and acted like she was concerned. "My child, life is life. People do things when their hearts push them. Maybe he just remembered. Maybe he heard you have grown." Zuri looked down and nodded slowly. For once, she felt like maybe her life was about to change. Maybe this was the beginning of something good. Maybe she would finally be treated like a human being. Mama Kande walked back inside, then came out again with a small cloth bundle. "Pack only what you need," she said. "We will go today." "Today?" Zuri echoed. Mama Kande's eyes narrowed slightly, but her voice stayed sweet. "Yes, today. The road is long. We must start early." Zuri nodded quickly. She did not want to question it too much and make Mama Kande angry. She went to the corner where her few things were kept: one old wrapper, one torn blouse, and a small headscarf. She tied them together neatly and held the bundle against her chest. Before leaving, she glanced around the compound. Lami was standing near the cooking area, pretending to stir something in a pot, but her eyes were fixed on Zuri. Her face was blank, but something sharp lived behind her gaze. Zuri lowered her eyes quickly. Mama Kande stepped out, adjusting her wrapper, acting like a caring guardian. "Let us go," Mama Kande said. And so they walked. At first, the road felt normal. They passed familiar trees, familiar paths, familiar sounds. Zuri saw women carrying baskets. She saw children running. She saw goats chewing leaves like nothing in the world was wrong. But as they kept walking, the village sounds began to fade. The road became quieter. The trees became thicker. The air began to feel different, like the world was holding its breath. Zuri held her bundle tighter. "Auntie," she said softly, "how far is this place?" Mama Kande did not look at her. "Not far," she replied, but they kept walking. They walked past the last farm, past the last small stream, past the last place where Zuri could recognize anything. Zuri's stomach tightened. Still, she followed. Because Zuri had lived her whole life learning to obey. And because deep down, she still believed that family could not truly harm her. By afternoon, the sun was hot. Zuri's feet were dusty. Her throat was dry. Her body was tired. Still, Mama Kande walked fast, as if she was being pushed by something invisible. Finally, they reached a place where everything felt wrong. It was a silent place where even birds refused to sing. No laughter, no insect sounds, no rustling leaves, just quiet. A lonely place. Zuri stopped walking. "Auntie," she whispered, fear rising like water in her chest. Mama Kande turned around slowly, and for the first time that day, her sweet face dropped. Her eyes looked hard. Zuri took a small step back. "This is the place," Mama Kande said. Zuri's lips trembled. "Where is my uncle?" she asked. Mama Kande did not answer right away. Instead, she reached into her wrapper. Zuri's eyes widened. "What is that?" Zuri asked, her voice shaking. Mama Kande brought out a small object wrapped in dark cloth. Her hand was steady. Zuri's whole body began to tremble. "Auntie, please," Zuri said, but Mama Kande's face showed no pity. "You think you will go to the palace," Mama Kande said, her voice low like a dangerous secret. "You think you will be chosen." Zuri stared at her, confused and scared. I did not say that," Zuri whispered. Mama Kande stepped closer. "Your face is too bright," she hissed. "Even in rags, you shine. If you step into that palace, you will shame my daughter." Zuri's eyes filled with tears. "Auntie, please," she pleaded. "What have I done to you?" Mama Kande's lips curled. "You were born," she said. Then she lifted the charm. Zuri tried to run, but her legs felt heavy, like the ground was holding her. Mama Kande reached out quickly and placed the charm on Zuri's head. In one breath, Zuri turned into a drum. A wooden drum, standing alone, trapped. The world spun. Zuri felt herself fall inward like she was being pushed into darkness. She wanted to scream, but her mouth was gone. She wanted to move, but her hands were gone. She wanted to run, but she had no legs. She was still alive, still thinking, still feeling, but she was now wood. Zuri screamed, but no sound came from her mouth, only the soft echo of sorrow beating inside the drum.
Mama Kande stepped back, breathing slowly, watching the drum like it was nothing. Then she turned away, without looking back. Zuri wanted to call her, to beg, to ask why, but all she could do was stand there, trapped in silence. Night fell, cold, silent. Zuri cried until her tears became rhythm. Inside the drum, her heart pounded in panic. Her fear was so big, it felt like it would break her wooden body. She thought of her mother, someone she could not even remember clearly. She thought of her father, how his grave had looked. The darkness around her felt thick. She did not know how many hours passed. All she knew was that she was alone. And her tears did not fall like normal tears anymore. They became something else. They became sound. A soft, trembling beat. A crying rhythm. The next morning, sunlight entered the lonely place like a visitor who did not belong. Zuri could not turn her head to see it, but she could feel warmth on her wooden skin. Then she heard footsteps. Not Mama Kande's footsteps. Different footsteps. Careful footsteps. A poor farmer and his daughter walked past the place on their way to the farm. They were talking quietly about seeds and harvest, about hard times, about how food was not enough. Then they heard it. A drum. Crying. The farmer stopped. His daughter froze. The girl's eyes grew wide. "Father," the girl whispered, "drums do not cry." The farmer looked around slowly. His face was tired, but his eyes were sharp. He saw the drum standing alone, like it had been abandoned. The crying sound continued, soft, sad, and strange. The farmer stepped closer and touched it lightly. The drum shook. Then a voice came out, weak, shaking, but clear. "I am not a drum," Zuri's voice trembled. "I am a girl." The farmer's hand pulled back like he had touched fire. His daughter gasped, covering her mouth. They stared at the drum, their hearts pounding. The drum began to speak again, and as Zuri started to tell them everything, her parents, the cruelty, the forest, the betrayal, the farmer and his daughter could not stop their tears. They wept openly. "This evil must be exposed," the farmer said. He lifted the drum carefully, as if it was a wounded child. His daughter held the other side, her hands shaking, and together they started walking toward the palace. The palace gates were tall and heavy, carved with old symbols that told stories of kings, wars, justice, and mercy. Guards stood on both sides, holding long spears that shone under the sun. It was a place where lies rarely survived for long. As the poor farmer and his daughter approached the gate, the guards stepped forward at once. "Stop!" one of them shouted, lifting his spear. "What are you carrying?" The farmer's hands tightened around the drum. His heart was beating fast, but he did not drop it. "It is a drum," he said calmly, "but it is also a girl." The guards burst into laughter. "A talking drum?" Another guard mocked. "Do you think this is a market for stories?" Before the farmer could explain, the drum began to cry. Not loudly, not wildly. It cried slowly, deeply, like a wounded heart trying to breathe. The sound spread across the palace yard. It was not the sound of celebration. It was not music. It was pain given a voice. The guards froze. The drum spoke. "I am not a drum," Zuri's voice said, shaking but clear. "I am a girl." The laughter died instantly. One guard stepped back. Another swallowed hard. People nearby stopped walking. Servants carrying trays paused mid-step. Even the palace pigeons fluttered away as if they sensed something heavy in the air. "Take them to the king," the head guard said quietly. Inside the palace, the king sat on his throne, dressed in royal cloth, his face calm but sharp with wisdom. Beside him sat the prince. He was young, but his eyes showed depth. He had grown up hearing stories of bravery and betrayal, but he had never heard a story begin like this. The farmer knelt. His daughter knelt. They placed the drum gently on the palace floor like one would place a sleeping child. The king leaned forward. "What is this?" he asked. Before anyone could answer, the drum cried again. Then it spoke, and Zuri told her story. She spoke slowly, as if each word carried years of pain. As Zuri spoke, her voice trembled inside the drum, but it did not break. The elders lowered their heads. Some servants wiped tears from their faces. The priest clenched his jaw, his chest tightening with anger and sadness. When Zuri finished speaking, the palace was silent. Even the air felt heavy. The king straightened slowly. "Bring Mama Kande and her daughter Lami immediately," he ordered. When the message reached Mama Kande's house, she did not panic. She smiled. She adjusted her wrapper proudly and said to Lami, "You see, the king has heard of my generosity." Lami smiled too. "Maybe he wants to reward you for raising that orphan." They dressed carefully. Mama Kande wore her best cloth. Lami tied her headscarf neatly. They walked to the palace with confidence, greeting people along the way like honored guests. Mama Kande's heart was calm. She believed she had won. When they entered the palace, they walked boldly to the center. Mama Kande bowed slightly, a practiced smile on her face. "My king," she said sweetly, "you sent for us." The king did not smile. Instead, he pointed to the drum on the floor. "Do you know this?" the king asked. Mama Kande looked at the drum and laughed lightly. "A drum? Yes, my king. Drums are common things." The drum cried softly. Then it spoke. "Auntie," Zuri's voice said gently from inside the wood, "it is me." Mama Kande froze. Her smile cracked. Lami stepped back, her face turning pale. The court gasped. Mama Kande's knees began to shake. Still, she tried to pretend. "This is witchcraft," Mama Kande cried. "Someone is trying to deceive the palace." The king raised his hand. "Bring the witch," he commanded.
When the witch entered, her eyes still did not blink. She stood confidently at first, but the crying drum shook her calm. The king spoke firmly. "Break the charm." She hesitated. When she realized her life was at stake, she sighed and spoke words older than the forest. The charm broke. In the center of the palace, before everyone, Zuri returned to human form. She fell to the ground, breathing hard, shaking, alive. Women screamed. Men shouted in shock. Zuri stood slowly. She was whole, free. Mama Kande collapsed. Not suddenly, not loudly. Her knees weakened first. The strength she had carried into the palace, her pride, her confidence, her belief that she had outsmarted fate, drained from her body like water leaking from a broken pot. Her wrapper loosened as she sank to the ground, her hands trembling, her mouth opening as if to speak, but no words came out. For the first time, Mama Kande looked small. The woman who had once shouted commands now could not lift her head. The woman who had spoken cruelty with ease now tasted fear, thick and bitter on her tongue. Her eyes darted around the palace, searching for help, for mercy, for something to hold on to, but the faces she saw were no longer friendly. They were watching. They were judging. Beside her, Lami broke. She cried loudly, falling forward, her voice sharp and desperate. Gone was the proud walk she had used to enter the palace. Gone was the confident smile. Her tears came fast and messy, spilling onto the palace floor. "Please," Lami cried, "please, my king, have mercy. We did not mean it like this." But even as she begged, her words sounded empty, because the truth had already spoken for itself. The drum had cried. The girl had spoken. There was nothing left to hide. The king did not shout. He did not rise in anger. His silence was heavier than any punishment. Mama Kande was lifted from the ground, no longer a proud woman, but a broken one. Lami was pulled to her feet, still crying, still begging, her voice hoarse with fear. The palace guards led them away, their footsteps echoing across the courtyard. They were all banished alongside the witch, sent far beyond the forest to a place where they could no longer harm innocent lives. They were never allowed to return. Days passed. The palace returned to its normal rhythm, but Zuri did not return to her old life. She stayed quietly within the palace walls,
given a small room, clean clothes, and time, something she had never been given before. Slowly, Zuri began to heal. She learned how to sit without fear of being shouted at. She learned how to eat without rushing. She learned how to walk without looking over her shoulder. People spoke to her kindly. Some smiled at her. Some bowed their heads in respect. Each small kindness helped stitch together parts of her heart that had been torn for years. When the time came for the prince to choose a bride, there was no display, no long ceremony, no women standing in rows. The prince already knew. He stepped forward one evening and stopped before Zuri. He looked at her, not like someone judging beauty, but like someone who understood strength. He had seen her pain. He had heard her voice. He had watched how she carried herself even after everything she had endured. He saw her kindness. He saw her bravery, and he chose her. Not because she was perfect, not because she tried to be seen, but because her heart had survived darkness without losing its light. When he spoke her name, Zuri felt her breath catch in her chest, and for the first time in her life, her tears were not from pain.
Moral of the story: cruelty can silence a person for a time, but truth always finds a voice. Kindness does not make someone weak, it makes them strong enough to survive injustice. And those who harm others out of jealousy may hide for a while, but their actions will one day be exposed. And no matter how small, poor, or forgotten a person seems, a good heart and courage will always rise above suffering. Thank you so much for watching.